today. And we have people already dropping information, already asking questions. They're ready. So we're going to get started with talking about our do's and don'ts. And we've got 2 hours. Everybody was able to get through their intro. You know who they are. These are some award-winning writers. These are people who have done it many ways. But in that, we all admit that we've all made mistakes in this process. So if you are interested in publishing a book, do not think this is some perfection test. Okay. It's going to be done perfectly every time. You're going to learn, you're going to grow, you're going to figure out, I won't do that again. I'm not going to spend that money again. I'm not going to go in that direction again. But what we don't want you to do is to stop writing. So I have 2 preliminary questions I wanted to kind of lay out there before we get into our do's and don'ts. And the way we're going to do this particular roundtable discussion is we're going to break up our do's and don'ts based on 5 different key areas. We're going to start with book writing. And this is the beginning. Selecting your genre, your writing, your editing, and your layout. What are some of the do's and don'ts? And everybody will get an opportunity to talk about those. Then we're going to go to book publishing. Okay. And this is, do I go the traditional route, the vanity route, or the self-publishing route? And I'm going to give some definitions based on for this conversation. Okay. That we're going to be talking about what were your do's and don'ts in selecting your process for publishing. We're going to talk about book distribution. Do I use Amazon, Ingram, BookBaby, all these different tools if you are going to self-publish? What are the tools that you use to get your work out there? Okay. And there are so many of them, direct to digital. There's way too much information. Hey, it's way too much information and too many schemes. Okay. So we're going to talk about that as well. Then we're going to talk about book marketing. How do you effectively use social media, paid advertising, events, speaking engagements, all those different things. And we're going to wrap up by talking about building your brand. But before we get to that, I want about 2 or 3 of you to talk a little bit about why Black writers must continue to write. Anybody? Throw your hand up. We've got so many. I don't want to. Ebony, you want to start?
Yeah, so it's imperative that we continue to talk and to continue to write our stories, because if we don't, then who will? And we have to control our narrative. I am a firm believer in that, because if you don't look like me, then you cannot effectively, in my opinion, you cannot effectively write my experience. You cannot. And I believe that when we share our story, when we share our narrative, we can say, this is the truth. And you cannot disbar, you cannot alter our truth if we've already said it and put it out there. And so I believe it's very important that we continue to write our stories, continue to share them, and be unapologetic with what we share, and control it.
Ayana, I'm definitely going to get to you. 1 second. I just wanted to say this. The world has changed. Okay. Like I said, I published my first book 10 years ago when self-publishing was still over 10 years ago, when self-publishing was still kind of a black eye. You know, it was, you self-published because you couldn't get a publishing deal, which means your story really isn't valid because the people in power didn't say that it was good. You know how that is. And so it was kind of one of those things where I was still hunting for these stories to be told, just like you said, Ebony, our stories to be told. What I am seeing now is a shift, and maybe many of you have seen this too, is that there are out there, I would even give it to Netflix, who are saying, we're going to put some of these stories out here that aren't just traditionally published books, people who made $1 million. These are just good stories. So if we don't put our stories out there, just like Ebony said, who's gonna put them out there for us? Who's going to ring our bell for us? So we have to continue to do that. Ayana?
Yes, I just wanted to add my 2 cents into this on why it's so important. Historically, we are griots, and we continue to pass down our narratives through storytelling. It is a powerful tool of connecting generations, connecting family, and holding history. When we had everything else stripped away from us, we had our stories, and that we preserved through all of our struggles and through all of the things that we came through. So it's very valuable that we continue to tell our narrative. We continue to represent the diversity in our lives through our storytelling. Traditional publishing, there's so much disparity and there's so much disadvantages for people of color in traditional publishing. Since the 1950s, only 11% of books that were traditionally published are by authors of color. And so just combating that racial disparity in traditional publishing is why we have a responsibility. I consider it a responsibility to continue to tell our stories and to make space for our stories to be told and our histories to be preserved. So it's incredibly important that we continue to write, that we continue to take up space, because systematically we are pushed out of spaces. And it's important for generations to come to know that who they are and what they have to say is valuable enough to be printed and to be read. So that's why I think it's very important that we continue to tell our stories.
Excellent. Anyone else want to jump in on this one? Lenora? And then Tracy, we're going to get to you.
Yes, I echo everything that both of you guys said. It is a complex, layered question, but then also really simple. Black people are just like the pioneers of revolution, evolution, and all the things, right? And as Black writers, it's important because our story, our experiences, our creativity matters. You guys mentioned also how our history of who we are, our value, and what we've been told throughout history has been skewed from a different narration, right? And it's important that we share our story and keep writing from our experiences, from our lenses, and continue to amplify our voices. Whether you're writing fiction, nonfiction, poetry, children's books, whatever genre you're writing, it's still your voice and your story through your lens. And as we know, we've been historically marginalized group as Black people and writers in general. So again, it's our power, and I feel like it's a part of our identity in sharing who we are with the world, right? So just keep writing and sharing your stories for sure.
Absolutely. Tracy?
Yes, I agree with everyone. And, we're all unique individuals and we all have a unique story to tell. And so, like, no one can tell your story. And I think, like Ayana was saying, the publishing industry still isn't really publishing that many of our stories. And the stories that they are publishing, it may lead, the greater world to believe that we are one dimensional. But, as Black people, we are multidimensional and we have a lot of stories to tell. And so when we tell our own stories, we're like breaking through those stereotypes that are out there. So it's really important that we tell our unique stories. I definitely agree with that.
Absolutely. And that ties into the next question, was about diversity and why it matters. And it is essential that this industry is as diversified as possible. I remember interviewing someone who was talking about just the continent of Africa and how great we were as kings and queens on the continent. I remember reading the title, The Dark Continent, is what they would say. A lot of that had to do with the fact that there was this idea of pushing the narrative that there was no history recorded in Africa of our ancestry. We just remember slavery, that period, and that's it. But that's not true. We put these titles out there and it limits us, right? The dark continent. Our communities are ghettos and slums, and these titles are very limiting. We have to demystify, for those who don't understand the culture, what it is to be Black, the beauty, the magic of being African American. And so I am so happy to see all these beautiful faces, but also to hear you talk about the importance of reclaiming and controlling the narrative. That is key to it. We have some things, people are dropping information in the chat box. We're going to just encourage you to continue to do that. Let's talk a little bit about this diversity issue, though. This fact that so few books are being put out there by the traditional publishers, and so that leads us to move in another direction, and that direction is focusing on different ways to publish our books. Aziza, you are someone who had a publishing deal talk about that experience, what you learned, and were you able to control your narrative in that process? Now, I want to say this: we are not anti get a publishing deal. Okay, that's not what we're doing here. You publish well, make your money, do well. We are encouraging that, but we do know that it's a hard road to get from being a new author to being one who's getting a check for writing. That's the path. And so it is of interest to us. You want to talk a little bit about diversity in the industry as a whole? Anything that you've learned through this process?
So for me, my initial traditional publish deal was actually done through a press that got bought out by Urban Books. So it was a urban book, but it wasn't the street lit type of urban book. So it was still a focus on people who look like me. When it was initially sent, it was going to kind of get into that whole get grouped into the whole street lit type of classification, which was not something I want. So actually the Urban Renaissance, that actual line, my book Love and Deja was really the reason that kind of came about, because Urban Books didn't really know what to do with my story, because my story, they wanted it, and it was the type of story that needed to be told. You know, this was grown folks finding love, but not necessarily in a romance sense. It was it had a level of espionage and thriller type going on with it, but they didn't want it necessarily to be grouped with the regular or what was being pushed at the time, that the typical street lit type of book. And again, this was 1999, 2000. So this is when Triple Crown and, you know, a lot of those books were being done. And so there was a balancing act. And for me, that was probably my greatest, I think, accomplishment when it came to the traditional side, was the fact that that I could feel like I could write what I wanted to write, or what I was called to write. Because again, I am but the scribes. My characters tell their own stories. There were some challenges in the editing process, especially. And I think a lot of that was the whole idea of the suspension of belief. I had described in my book, you know, you write what you know. And, you know, I had grown up on the east side of Atlanta. So there were neighborhoods that I described in the book that anybody from Atlanta, when I started, you know, when they started reading the book, they was like, oh, that sounds like such and such neighborhood, or that sounds like, you know, this neighborhood. And they were right. But the editor initially said, these places don't exist. Like neighborhoods that are designed like this don't exist. And I'm like, yeah, we live in these neighborhoods. But she had never been, I guess, outside of New York. And so in her frame of reference, neighborhoods where you have an entire neighborhood where the whole neighborhood is just 5 houses and everybody has a pool and everybody has tennis court, didn't exist. People from Atlanta knew that sandstone back then, when it was, you know, first built, that's how those houses were built. And so I was fortunate enough that my agent was very good at navigating that. And eventually it kind of, I was able to keep my story authentic to the way it was. And, you know, there were some other challenges, but for me, I think the greatest blessing was that I had an agent who knew the business. And that's, you know, the big part of this, that this is business. And so you have to approach it as such. The writing part is still creative, you know, the writing part is still important. But for me, there is a clearly defined line. You know, I being a writer and being an author can be mutually exclusive. I will always be a writer. I may not necessarily always be an author, but the author side really is business. So you need to know, you know, you need to understand when someone sends you a contract, what every line in that contract means. And if it means forking out some money to, you know, make sure, you know, you have a third party who can explain it to you in layman's terms, then so be it. I was fortunate enough that I have a degree in music industry, and contracts and copyright law were kind of my thing. So I was able to actually read my contract and actually rewrote some of my stuff in my contract. And don't be afraid to do that. You don't have to accept what they put in front of you as is. That was a lesson that, you can say no, you can rewrite things. If they opt not to accept those changes, then you as the author have to make a decision to say, okay, I'll accept it how they've given me, or don't be afraid to walk away. I mean, back then, most people didn't. That if they're waving an advance check in front of you, most people are not necessarily going to walk away. That was how they got their foot in the door. But we have so many more options now. And there is less of a stigma, while there's still some stigma about self-publishing. And so, you have a little more power now to make a decision on which direction you want your career to go.
Great. Thank you so much. I think with that said, we're going to get into our do's and don'ts. Okay. Because I feel like the exceptionalism of this conversation is going to be in learning from everybody's experiences and understanding that no walk towards publishing is the same. Okay. We have a lot of decisions to make. And just as we say in our title, my manuscript is done, meaning I've done the creative side of it. Now what? What do I do next? And everyone on the screen has done it a different way. And I hope our audience understands and appreciates that and hope you have your pen and paper out so that you can start taking notes, because I'm taking notes. I've learned so much from the Black Writers Workspace. I get teary-eyed when I think about it, because I've hosted so many roundtables and interviewed so many writers. I have been able to go and re-release books because of the information that I've obtained from writers like you. So you're not wasting anything that you say, but your experiences are going to really turn the page for those out there who are trying to move their ideas forward. We talked about diversity. We've talked about the importance of continuing to write. And now we're going to talk about what we've learned in this process. And we're going to break it down with, starting about the book writing. I call it, this is the start. Okay. You're writing your book. One of the things that I would say to people is start with your marketing strategy in mind. Okay. Before you even begin to write, start thinking about how you're going to market it. Because as Aziza says, we talk about, getting these deals. Every deal isn't for you. Just because you may get a book deal and then the check is on the table, you may have to completely make your work void of all the things that you want to put in it, all the characters, the character development, the scenes. These things may be something that you end up losing in the process of that transaction, of getting that deal, because now someone is going to own that work, and they're looking at everything from the perspective of what a reader wants to read. And if the perception is that most readers are white and affluent or educated, then will they understand your East Side of Atlanta description? Will they understand, my character that grows up in the hood, but is extremely educated? Will they understand that everybody who grows up in what they consider a ghetto is not ignorant or, a taker? Will they understand that? And so we can always lose what we're trying to do from the beginning. So we're going to start with the whole start of the process of getting your book out there. The manuscript is done, ladies. It's on the table. You showed it out to everybody. All right. You're like, look at what I did. Your husband like, I'm so happy this is over because she was too much drama. It is done. And now the question is, what happens now? And we're going to start with genre selection. And I say, start with the marketing strategy in mind. Know your audience. Who are you writing for? Anybody want to chime in? Jade, let's go with your do's and don'ts of book writing. We're going to talk about genre selection, writing, editing, and layout. What are some of your do's and don'ts? Tell us about your experiences.
Yeah, so I just want to go off of what you said, Michelle, about knowing your audience is so important. Just because that I wrote and I self-published two books that are very different from one another. So one thing that I realized with my first book, Vienna, is that the audience that I was trying to gear that book towards is mainly like the 20-year-old millennial. But with my second book, Hotel Stuff, that audience is like 16 to 18 or maybe 20. So it's like you have to understand who your book is for, because if you then built an audience for your first book, that second book, that's a completely different genre, may not appeal to that same audience because they don't want to read that. So you have to like kind of understand and also network and speak to people and try and figure out what people are looking for now, but also sticking to your story and making sure that, you know, you're staying true to your voice, but understanding the crowd that you're writing for.
Excellent. Excellent. Alina?
Alana.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. When I first started with my book, I had actually wrote out the manuscript. I went online, I started Googling, I said, okay, I need to figure out the steps to get this book published. And as I went online, I still wasn't clear. I did not want to waste money. So I ended up reaching out to somebody like Coach Ebony. I had a book coach to give me some guidance. So I would suggest that. In regards to your genre, I just base it on you. It's what speaks to you. We have an opinion and we have an experience about everything. So you share it according to how you feel about things. Your writing is your work. Express it. Express yourself. Don't be concerned about how other people may take your book. This is you. This is your vision. Find other resources that you need. You can go to I write children's book. You can use another children's book. Okay. What do I want my copyright page to look like? What do I want my dedication? Those things. Use some examples. Use those things as resources. In regards to the don'ts, Michelle, I publish. One of the main things I think is important is that don't put out work that has grammatical errors, that's not professionally edited. Don't shortchange yourself. Put out a book that you are completely satisfied with, and stay firm in your vision. Don't change it based on other people. You have a vision. That's why you wrote this book. Don't be afraid to reach out to other writers. I mean, other writers are often excited about sharing some of their knowledge, even in this type of forum. When you're picking layouts, don't just close your eyes and just pick anything. We have to read. We have to figure out what will make the book pop for us. What's going to make us stand out? What's going to help us emphasize our story? That's some of the things I want to share.
Excellent. And I want everybody, if you're on the screen, off the screen, I don't care. I want you to take your invisible hat and we're going to turn it from creator to entrepreneur. Okay. We're going to turn it from creator to entrepreneur, because everything that you just said is about a standard of doing something. Okay. There is a standard of writing. It's not just I write anything. I was saying this during our last Pen Posse. Because you can publish doesn't mean you should publish. Okay. I can publish anything. Y'all don't know if anybody's used Amazon KDP. I can literally write some junk right now, put a cover on it, upload it to KDP and have it ready to sell in 72 hours. But it doesn't mean I should do it. So the editing, key. The layout, key. Care about what your work looks like. Care about what the reader is going to experience, because through the work that I've done in researching and surveying readers, I can tell you there are still too many readers who will not read self-published work because they think it is no good. It's not well edited. I can't follow the character development. I don't know if they know what they're talking about. And the reality is that how many great works of art have I read that's self-published? Many. How many works of art that's self-published that is not great have I read? Many. So the challenge that we have as writers is to have a standard. Don't think self-publishing means I can just write anything, self-edit it when I don't know how to edit, and just put it out into the world. Because when your work doesn't have good quality, it diminishes the experience for all of us who are trying to be good at this. We want to be good at this. We want people to read our work. So care about what you put out there. Love it. Great, great, great. Ayana, talk to me.
Yes. I second everything that was said, and there's some comments that have come up around how it's difficult to decide and find what your audience is. And as a book coach, when I meet with aspiring authors, I ask them to start about the intention of the story. What is your intention? Start from the purpose of the story. What are you trying to tell? And what do you want accomplished at the end of the book? The last letter on the page, the last punctuation on the page, the period that ends the story. When I get to the end, what is it that you wanted to accomplish with this story? What did you want to leave the reader with? Is where I kind of start my artists and my authors off with. So even before you think of the target audience, which is absolutely important in marketing, and you should identify a target audience, what is the purpose of this book? When I crack it open and I read through it, what do you want me to take away from it? And did you accomplish that in the story? And so starting from that point, and I agree with you, Michelle, that you're going to put on many hats. When you are writing your manuscript, you are the creative, you're the artist, you're deeply and passionately connected to telling a story. But you have to take that hat off once you're done with the manuscript, and you should pass it along. Even if you have experience editing, I am a freelance editor. I do not edit my own stuff. Because it's mine. It's like my child, and we don't have much objectivity with our children. We see our children as perfect, and other people are like, nah, your children, their shirt is wrinkled, and you're like, my child's shirt is not wrinkled. So you have to pass it off to a professional. Give your work to a professional editor, not your home girl that likes to read and is like, oh yeah, girl, I'll read it for you. It's nice. They can give you some feedback on your work, and you can solicit feedback from your family. Pay for or find an editing service that is professional and they know what they're doing, and be receptive in the editing process. It is a process. It shouldn't be rushed. It should be going back and forth. There is re-edits that need to be made. There's feedback that you're going to get. Ask questions. Be deeply invested in the editing process. Also, I love that Aziza said learning how to negotiate and advocate for yourself as an artist, because there are some things about your story that make it authentic and make it your own, and you don't want to lose that in the editing process. So you need to know what your non-negotiables are for your story. Like, no, I'm not taking that scene out. That scene is a crucial part of my story. If you don't get it, maybe you're not the editor and the agent for me. It's okay to change your team if your editing team and your agents don't see the intentionality of your story. But you need to take your book through a process. Don't rush it. It's going to come out and it's going to be the perfection. And there is no such thing as perfection, but it's going to be what it's going to be. But don't rush the process. So that's one of my don'ts. Don't rush the process. Trust the process and go through it. Your book needs to go through people's hands. You need an objective support with getting your book done. If you know you can't draw, don't draw your illustrations. Find an illustrator. It's okay. Don't use clip art that everybody else used from Google, because we've seen that picture a million times. Take some time to outsource services that you yourself cannot do. Read the fine print and all of these sites that tell you we'll publish your book in 72 hours. Learn about royalties and how royalties work. If they're going to do it for you, they're going to take a cut. Somebody's going to get paid if they are offering you a service. So know what your take home is and know what they're getting from your book, what ownership you have. Take time to research copyright and how to protect your work. All of those things are important in the process. Yes. And it takes time. And if you don't know, like everybody else before me has said, reach out to somebody who has done it and ask for their experience. Come to round table discussions like this. Connect with any one of us. I will definitely drop my email in the chat for anybody who wants to connect and just ask me some questions, and I free of charge, because I believe that knowledge should be free at some point. So please connect with people who have done this before, but don't rush the process. Take your time with it. And also, success is a personal thing. So don't judge your success on anybody else's numbers or anybody else's book, what anybody else is doing. Define your success for your book on your own. When I first self-published in 2010, the only thing I wanted to do was see my words in print. If my mama was the only person who bought my book, I was like, I'm an author, my book is in print, and my mama bought it, so I made it. Mama, I made it. I didn't have a sales goal. I didn't have any intention behind just getting my book into print. Now, fast forward many, many years later, over a decade later, I'm approaching being an author and the business of being an author much different than I did in 2010, and setting different goals for myself as an author. So your measurement of success as an author can and should change in your career, but define success for yourself.
I think that everything you said is so right on. I hope everyone is listening to what everyone is saying, but absolutely, success for you is going to be defined by you. What is success? For me, like you said, if I get people, I feel like my work is for a few. And when I feel like I've reached that group, I'm good. Everything else is gravy. And, do I want to be a best-selling author? I would love to be. Do I want to make a lot of money at this? Absolutely. Absolutely. But I do know that it takes time and strategy. And I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I own a PR firm. I can tell you that the planning behind a book is intense. And so the reason we're doing this is so those of you out there who say, I wrote my book, I'm done, will know that the creative side may be done, but now the hat has turned to entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship, and you have got to start building strategies, marketing strategies, sales strategies. All these different tools are going to be essential. So Tracy, we've got a lot to go through, so we're going to get everybody in. Tracy, talk to us about your do's and don'ts when it comes to book writing. We're talking about the start. So we're talking genre selection, writing, editing, layout.
Okay, real quick. I love what everyone has said. For me, I found that after you have completed your story, particularly if it's fiction, and with fiction, a do is that you need to know the story you want to tell and just go for it until you finish your book. Okay, so once you've finished your book, that's when I think it's important to go ahead and join a critique writing group and participate in a writing group, a critique writing group, and go through that process of having them critique your work and you critique their work. It's really good when you do it when your book is done, because, as the critique group asks you questions, whether or not if it's going to get answered later in the book. But then also, as they ask you questions, you thought you may have answered it in your story, but in fact, you realize that you didn't, and they have a valid point. And so that allows you to go back into your story and make sure you are expressing and getting across exactly what you want to get across. Because as writers, we have so much in our head, and sometimes some things don't quite make it to the paper. And so when you're in a critique group, they kind of help you figure that out. And then real quick, the next thing that I did, is a don't. This is a don't. As soon as I finished my book, after having worked on that book for 10 years through getting ideas together, stopping and going, honey, I was ready to go. So I went ahead and learned how to do my query letter and what I started querying. And truly my book was not ready for that step, but it turned into a positive because I had a few agents that did respond to me and gave me some of the best advice that I received in my writing process. So when you're done with your book, I say, even whether you're going to self-publish or whether you're going to try to go with a traditional publisher, create a query letter, because all these things are going to help you to get a better understanding of what you have written, and make sure that you have what you want in your book. So you write a summary of your book. You need to do your query letter. and you need to do your elevator pitch. All these things help you be able to write, help you be able to talk and speak about your book. When you begin to market on social media, and sending out stuff to your friends and family about your book, all that helps you to be able to speak clearly and precisely about your book. So those are some of my do's and one of my main don'ts. But as long as it's querying those agents, I had not published. So it wasn't disastrous for me. And actually it did end up helping me. So turn a negative into a positive.
Excellent. Excellent. Love that. Writing groups are excellent. I've used them before. You will be amazed at the caliber of people you have reading your work, people outside of your normal target audience, and getting their feedback. That's a great space to do it in. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tracy. Justine?
Yes. So as far as blogging, because someone did ask about like suggestions on blogging, blogging is very different. It's more of like a conversational piece. So a lot of the content comes from real time experiences. So I think one of the do's for blogging is to like actually get out and live life. I find that like, what Tracy said about, writing a book, like behind the scenes, I am working on a book, but I started in 2020. I'm probably not going to finish that book until 2025, and I'm cool with that. I feel like when you're writing a book, you have to have life experience. So same goes for blogging. But with blogging, it's a little less intense because it's more so of you giving tips and tricks and, sharing from your authentic voice as opposed to creating characters and, creating a setting. It's not as, challenging, but it is challenging in ways because you do have to find a way to balance the brand and also your voice in a space where sometimes you could get distracted. Like for me, I sometimes have a challenge of finding the right content. So I do understand, like as a blogger, like you have to kind of go out and see what other bloggers are talking about and challenge yourself to see if that's things that you want to talk about. I had to like tick off a couple of things because you guys kind of like covered it already. But write when you're inspired. That's one of the things that I try to stand by. So if I don't write a blog post for 2-3 weeks, I'm fine with that, and also find a community. Like you guys said, it's super important to see an example and to be able to reference from that, because sometimes, like we said, you get in your head and you lose track of what your purpose is. As far as don'ts, I would say don't box yourself in. Like for me, I really enjoy writing about wellness. And I know like in mainstream, wellness is more so like health and fitness. But for me, wellness is mental health, having, a lifestyle that you truly want to live and being able to live that out every day. So I take when people say, "How are you?" I'm well, as a way to embrace wellness. And also not feeling like you could do it all. I personally struggled with finding a team. So I'm really happy that, some of you are editors. So now I'm going to reach out because personally, I sometimes don't put out blog posts because of the fact that I don't have an editor. And then, you just feel as if like you want to do it by yourself. So it's tough. You have to find that balance to figure out like what works for you and also like knowing where to search. So those are my do's and don'ts.
Excellent, excellent. So much good information. There's so much good information going in the chat box. So for those of you who are out there, read that chat box. You're going to get definitions of things. You're going to learn a little bit about it. Once again, the book is done, ladies. The book is on the table. All right. How many times do you write and rewrite? I know for me, that's my biggest hurdle. I write, I rewrite, I rewrite, I rewrite. When I get that final manuscript and it's sitting on the table, I'm excited. But now, once again, what we're doing on this Pen Posse is talking about what happens next. So, Justine, thank you so much. I'm glad we have a blogger because I love to blog, and I hope that all of you are blogging. Blogging is a great way to promote your work. And so taking a topic, writing about that topic, becoming a subject matter expert about a topic, and using blogging as a way of doing that is a great way to do it. And blogging isn't easy. It isn't easy at all. So I'm so happy we have a blogger here. Aziza, tell us about your do's and don'ts when it comes to those 3 start areas: genre selection, writing, editing, and laying it out.
All right, so when doing genre selection, definitely have a clear understanding of the genre and what the expectation is for the reader. So I write speculative fiction, and I do lean more towards high fantasy. And so there's a type of language that I would use. There's an expectation that, so in high fantasy, you'll be hard pressed to find a book that's probably less than 400 or 500 pages. We're talking about 1,000 pages books. So before you assign a genre to your work or and that's even in the writing process, just know that what are the expectations of the genre. We talked about the editing piece about that. In a lot of those, in a lot of specific genres, again, there is an expectation of how a story will be presented. There is an expectation that there may not be editing. I'm just calling it like I see it. This is something we continue. It's an expectation for some that, if you're doing category romance, that there is a formula that you follow. And if you try to put your book in category romance and you don't have a happily ever after, that's not going to be received well. So have a clear understanding of the expectations of the genre and the readers in that genre. A do is definitely when you're working with anybody. I'm a writer. The business stuff, I'm okay with handing off to someone else, but do put everything in writing. Even if it's not a full contract, have very clear understanding of the expectations from both sides. So when you're working with an editor, ask questions, find out, an editor who doesn't read speculative fiction and that's what you write may not be the editor to edit your work. They might be able to proofread. And, having an understanding of the different stages of editing. Editing is not a one-time swoop. There are different types of editors. There are content editors. There are line editors. Again, there are proofreaders. So understanding the process and knowing the different people involved. And then once you found the people who are appropriate for your work that you put in writing, what's the cost going to be? What are the expectations? What is the timeline of when something will come back? And I won't, a lot of people have said a lot of the things that were on my list, but one other thing that I definitely just want for everyone is to know your motivation, why you're doing this, why you're on the business side. That's going to determine, which direction, how much money do you want to invest in yourself? And this is an investment in yourself when you are paying an editor, when you are paying for someone to do the layout, if you don't want to learn how to do that yourself, if you are paying for a cover, you could pay $2,000-$3,000 for a cover, or you could pay $5 on Fiverr, but you'll have an expectation. But again, you have to know why you're doing this. If you're doing it just so that your family, to say that you publish a book and you just want it for your family, you may not be prepared to invest $1,000 when you aren't going to push this to the general public. So, knowing your motivations of being a writer, knowing your motivations of being an author, and then funneling that into your decisions on who you're going to work with, how you're going to move forward, how you're going to select your tribe and finding your tribe. And then the very last thing is know yourself. So, pay attention to when you're doing these bits and pieces of the process, how it makes you feel. So this is a transpersonal psychologist in me. I know I write in cycles. And so I can plan my writing for a certain part of the year. And then I plan handling the business side on the other parts of the year. So be mindful of, if you start to see these patterns, then you can take advantage of them. It doesn't mean that I don't do any marketing or anything like that at the later part of the year, but I can strategically plan it to not interrupt, the writing process. or I can go ahead and schedule all that stuff at the beginning part of the year and it, let it run seamlessly on the back end. So, being mindful and paying attention to yourself and how this process from, writing all the way through finding your tribe, through actually getting it out there, and then the push after that, and seeing if you can find a rhythm, and that will then make you feel better, and you'll feel like you're actually accomplishing more because you have areas where you can see things that are working well for you, and then you can utilize that to your advantage.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Lenora?
Leonora. Okay, so I know a lot was said before me, so you guys kind of checked off a lot of my do's and my don'ts. And I know for new people that may be here that have never published, it might seem and sound so overwhelming, so much to do as the writer, right? And then when we switch our hat to our entrepreneurship, it seems like just very overwhelming and so many tasks to do. So a tool that I utilize in my work life and my entrepreneurship life and my creative life are SMART goals. So SMART goals for me is basically you have your main vision, right? So your book is done, your manuscript is on the table, it's your final draft. You went through the editing process. Now what's next? So instead of just saying, okay, well, now I just have to sell my book and everyone's going to buy my book. What does that actually look like? What are the incremental steps to get there? And how can I tackle it little by little so that I'm not overwhelmed? And that also falls into knowing yourself and your work ethic. So you want to use SMART goals to set deadlines, both soft and hard, because sometimes deadlines can work against you as a creative, where you apply this additional pressure to yourself and then you end up putting out mediocre work, right? So know where you need to apply your soft deadlines and your hard deadlines. Think about your rollout as you are handing out your manuscript to get edited, to get feedback. Think about, how am I going to build my social media presence? We might not all love social media. I have a love and hate relationship for it. But if you are really trying to network your net worth and get yourself out there, social media, your presence is very important, and how you present yourself, how you present your work, how you roll out your book. What is the message that you want your audience to receive? Go to events like this, to panel discussions, to workshops. There's a lot of free workshops on Eventbrite that are virtual, that are in person. I'm going to one after this, right? You have to continue to study your craft, especially your genre, and continue to ask questions and learn from people around you. And then I also kind of want to piggyback off of editing. I know that we spoke a lot about the importance of editing, but it really does create the standard of you as an author and your writing, and how people will receive you or take you seriously, right? Mm-hmm. So like thinking about, and I'll drop the definitions in the chat, but like developmental editing, which is like the form, the plot, the character. Line editing, which is like, how do I improve clarity of my writing? Because you can think, wrote this is clear, this is, your creative mind is going, and it could be received like jibber jabber. Like, what are you trying to say? How do I bring clarity to that? Copy editing, which is kind of like readability, proofreading, grammar, mistakes, style, spelling. So you definitely want to circulate your manuscript a lot of times before you say, this is actually my final draft. There's been plenty of times where I'm like, I'm done, final draft, and then I sit on it, which is important for you to sit on your work, right? Come back to it, right? It's not a one-shot deal. Sit on your work. If you are stuck on a chapter or stuck on how you want to revise your work, go for a walk, do something else, or go into spaces that inspire you and come back to it, right? So don't apply that much pressure to your deadline, so that you give yourself time and room for your creativity to really flourish. And then I will say, which I guess we didn't really go into the publishing aspect, but really do your research and figure out how you want your book to circulate. Do you want it internationally, nationally, just in your community, your family? What does that mean when it comes to purchasing an ISBN, right? Because if a lot of us self-publish, we go through Kindle ADP on Amazon, but they actually own, you can opt into just a free ISBN, right? And it's like, okay, like this is free, great. But if you are an author that wants to circulate your work more and get it into like Barnes and Nobles and community Black owned bookstores and do vendorship with your books, which is really, really important too. Vending is so important. You want to own your ISBN. So republishing, being around like-minded people so that when you are in these spaces, you create these relationships. Now you're a vendor at an event, at a poetry event. I write poetry, I perform poetry. Now you're vending, you're doing book signing. So attend these things. What I will say, don't just put out your work and think that it's going to sell itself and all your family's going to support. Oftentimes, strangers, unfortunately, support you more than people around you, especially if you're constantly putting things out and constantly doing different things. They're not going to be able to support everything that you do all the time. So how do I now see beyond those lenses and reach out and build a different community, my own tribe outside of my family? So planning, soft deadlines, hard deadlines. Don't just sit on your work and expect it to sell itself, and do a lot of research, network, and And
Sounds
in the
good.
meantime, take care of your mental health too, because it does get stressful.
Absolutely. Coach Ebony, we're gonna wrap up with you, and then we're gonna do kind of a hot topic round where we're just gonna talk about the publishing and the distribution, and everybody can just talk to us about how you publish, but we're not gonna go into a long piece of it because we want to learn about how you published, and then kind of deal with some of the things that we just heard about, like talk about the ISBN, talk about what it means if you upload to Amazon and you don't have an ISBN, because you can do that. The limitations behind those things. So Coach Ebony, let's get your do's and don'ts towards book writing.
Yes, I don't know if y'all saw me, but I was making faces. I was nodding. I'm like, yes, y'all are dropping all the gems. And I hope every aspiring and published author, you're picking these things up, because I'm telling you, when your girl started in 2010 to write and then publish in 2012, these gems were not available. I mean, failure after failure. I'm like, I'm in this hole. I spent $2,500 on editing, and the worst thing I got was the problem with editing. So let me tell y'all my do's and don'ts. So my thing, because editing is such a strong point of the process for me, you gotta vet your editors. Just because someone has a degree in English does not mean they can edit your book. It does. Trust me, your girl, no, it does not mean that. Okay. You have to make sure the person that you are handing your book over to understands your genre. It is very, very important. You can ask them so I'll give you a couple of things. When you are looking at an editor, have them send you samples of the work they've already completed for other authors. They should. I know my editors do. They should have copies of other books they worked on and say, hey, this is the author that I worked with. You should be able to reach out to that author. Hey, what was your experience with this editor? How did it work out with this editor? Have them send you samples of work they've already completed. Another thing I would have you do is to have them edit your work, sample edit your work. Say, hey, I have 5 pages. Can you do what you do on my pages? They might say, I don't do 5. I can do 2 or 3. Sure. Whatever amount you want to do what you do. Let me see it. And what I always recommend is when they do your sample edit, to show you the markup in either Google or Word. They can show you the markup where the clean version, where they just do everything and you don't see any edits, and then the not unclean version where you can see where they did all the edits and what changed, and make sure they have comments and questions and concerns on the side so that you can address those things within your document. And another thing is I forget who mentioned it, but read the contracts. I mean, you got to know what your expectations are as a client, and you need to know what the expectations are from your editor. And if it's not clear, ask them, I need this to be cleared up for me. Do not be afraid to question. Why? Because it's your money. When I first started and I spent that $2,500, is between 2 editors and a proofreader. The two editors, they were, oh, this is a great book, blah, 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 blah. Then a proofreader gets it and she's like, yeah, you need some work, sis. You're missing transitional statements. You're missing character development. But I'm like, I just spent all this money on the editors. I'm so confused because a proofreader is the last person to get the book before you head into publishing it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I had no more money to go through and do what the proofreader suggested. So I had to just put it out there the way that it was. And then a book reviewer, I had given it to her, and she said, normally I don't do this, but I was compelled to do this with you. And she said, reach out. She said, call me. So she gave me a number and I called her, and she said, this book needs help. She was like, I sent her the first chapter. She said, off this first chapter, I can destroy your book. By having you send me the whole book, I can destroy it. I'm like, oh my God, my heart sunk. I wasn't ready. I thought she just loved it. I thought she was just going to be like, yes, this is a good book. But she introduced me to someone who has become a great friend to me, but she is my chief editor. And when I tell you she chopped my book up, it had taken me 6 months to write it. It had taken me 6 months for a rewrite. She chopped that book up so bad, and I cried. I was angry with her, but she pulled out the best in and from me and poured it into my writing. So in all that, make sure your editor knows what he or she is doing. I would say, in addition to finding the editor, as African-American, as Black writers, Black authors, try to find you a Black editor, a Black writer, because sometimes those who are not Black may not understand the lingo, depending on what you're writing. They may not understand your if it's a memoir. Majority of my clients write their personal stories, their memoirs. An editor who is not Black may not understand your Black experience, and may question a lot. Like, I'll just say this. So as an example, and as a Christian, we'll say something like, I had to walk it out. And they might, what? Walk it out? What you mean like the dance, walk it out? Like, no, I mean, I had to walk out this bitterness. I had to walk out, like, this is a process. It's a journey with Christ. That's what I mean. But you have to, your editor might want an editor who can understand your genre and where you're coming from. But those are my do's and don'ts. Everything that a lot of you have said, it was just on point. What was her name? Leonora. When you mentioned SMART goals, girl, I almost stood up and ran. SMART goals are amazing. I encourage any and every author, aspiring author, do your SMART goals. It will save you so much time, so much energy, because you're planning out your course. You're planning out your course, and it'll keep you focused. So that's all I got.
Thank you so much, ladies. This has been great. So much information that we've talked about, creating the query letter, knowing your motivation, staying true to your craft, understanding that setting SMART goals. I love that. I mean, all these different things, and more than anything, understanding the importance of a good editor. Okay, that is key. And setting a standard in our writing. And I want us to have a standard in our writing. That is a big piece of what I like to talk about on the Black Writers Workspace, is that we just can't write to write. We have to write with intention. We have to write for understanding. It doesn't have to be, all our work is not going to be loved by everybody. Okay, the audience isn't everyone. That's not the goal here. But at least having a standard set that you are going to invest in this work, because this work is going to outlive you. This work is going to outlive you. I want to say that again. And in 50 years, 100 years, people are going to be reading your work. What do you want them to know about you? Do you want them to read your book and say, she really didn't put any time and energy and effort into this? She really didn't care about the reader. I don't even know who she wrote this for. I don't know what the point of it is. Do you want them throwing the books in the fireplace to burn? What is it that we want people to do with the work that we put out there? This is our legacy. This is our legacy. And we have to start looking at it from that perspective, instead of thinking, well, I want to write a book because I want mom to be proud of me. That's great. That's great. But it has to be bigger than that. So I think it's important. Everything that was said was so amazing. We're going to lump together two of these sections now. That's on book publishing and distribution. I know the book publishing piece is important because everyone needs to know what to do once the book is done and they want to get it published. Do I traditionally publish, vanity publish, or self-publish? These are the three areas that we're going to be talking about. And then we're going to talk about what sources that were used by you in order to do these things. Now, what is self-publishing? Self-publishing, for the purpose of this conversation, is going to be just the act of doing it all yourself. You've written the book, or you got a ghostwriter. You do your book cover, or you hire a professional. You edit, you self-edit, or you hire a professional. You figure out what distribution outlet you're going to use. You do the marketing. That's the biggest piece on, to me. The writing is one thing. It's the marketing that makes it a true self-publishing effort, because the marketing is what's going to really take you to another level. You were talking about social media and how important it is, how much we love and hate social media. I do social media management for companies. I can tell you, I wake up every morning and I have to create content every single day. I love and I hate social media. I woke up yesterday, I told my husband, I wish I could get off of this. Like, I'm so over it. But now that I have the Black Writers Workspace, 12,000 people have to moderate all the conversations going in. I have 7 or 8 clients. I have to moderate everything going on their page. Social media is powerful because it's a tool that changed the game for us as writers. Before, you had to get a big deal, a big publishing deal with a big publishing house. They're going to put their money behind you. They're going to push you out. Now I can do it myself. I can create a brand for myself. You can see my face every day on Facebook and I can push my own book. It's a power play. However, it is one also that is exhausting and that needs strategy behind it. So we're going to talk a lot about that as well. But let's talk about this whole idea of what to do. So traditional, our self-published authors. I'm a self-published author. My first book, though, I use a vanity press. Now, that's going to be something we talk about separately. Vanity press is when you hire a company to come in and they may lay out your book for you, do your book cover, upload your book, those types of things for you, and you pay them. Okay, you're going to pay them. If you self-publish, you may do it all yourself. Now we have resources like Amazon KDP where you can upload yourself and you pay them royalties. It's not free, but you're not paying anyone up front. And then on the traditional publishing, how we're going to define that is these are the deals that people get when they go into, they get an agent, the agent goes out, help them get this deal, they get a check. So vanity, you're paying a company to publish for you. So traditional, the company is paying you. We're going to do kind of a round robin, go really quickly. I want to hear the mistake you made in your publishing. Okay, the mistake you made in your publishing. I think, Justine, I'm not sure. I don't think you've published just yet, right? So
no, okay. Just on WordPress, but it's different. Yeah.
But I want you to, well, you can talk about that too, because that's a whole nother piece there, these apps and opportunities that we have to publish. So I just want to hear very quickly how you published and the mistake you made. And if you are a multi-book publisher, how you changed. Now, very quickly, we're going to give everybody about 30 seconds to kind of get it in. Jade?
So yeah, the biggest mistake that I made is one thing that I will note is even if you buy your ISBN from Bowker, do not publish on Amazon, even using that ISBN, because Amazon will then identify your book as technically their property. So you want to publish on Ingram before you publish on Amazon, even if you buy your own ISBN. So let's say I buy my own ISBN, I publish on Amazon, and I still use my own ISBN. If I try to upload to Barnes & Noble or any other online retailer, they're going to tell me, no, you can't do that because that is still Amazon's property. So you want to then publish on Ingram, Spark, or another publishing retailer or distribution site, just because that will happen. And that was my mistake that I made.
I didn't know that. Did everybody know that?
Yep.
It's annoying.
Yeah, you can argue with them. I've been down that route with them, but I work for an entertainment attorney, and they send them little letters real quick, and it's a hassle. So it definitely is easier if you do it, through the other companies first, and then do it. But if you've already made that decision and done it that way, you can't get out of it. You just actually have to go through the whole, contacting them, and the little bits and pieces. It's time consuming and it's annoying, but you can get out of it if you're already in that position. But like Jay said, now don't put yourself in a position.
It's so funny. This is such a good conversation because there are people who are just completely against doing anything with Amazon. And, Amazon is, I have a new platform called Direct to Author, which you can actually upload, create a dynamic profile, and sell books directly from your website. So I want everybody to put their books out there. It's free. Directtoauthor.com. I'm just plugging myself all day. However, it's so much that I'm learning. With my first book, I used a vanity publisher who actually created my Amazon page for me. Now, it's over 10 years. I have no access to that page. I have called Amazon. It's my book. Why are you sending everything to this company? I don't work with them anymore. Can I? And they're like, it's nothing we can do. I call the company, and the company says, I need you to give me $800 to get access to your Amazon page. So it's so interesting, all these different things that you learn. But that was a lesson for me that I was like, nope, won't ever do this again. So, Ms. Hewley, talk to us about what your experience was with publishing and what you wouldn't do again.
Well, I self-published, and I went through Ingram Spark as my printing distribution. I actually had a book coach, so my experience has been great because I had someone who I could ask questions with before I made any moves and kind of talk each process out. The only thing that I would tell folks is in regards to that is just, self-publishing costs money. So put your money aside, plan ahead so that you're able to get through this process. The distribution takes a while. If you think you're going to get your book back in a week, quite often it doesn't really work that way. So you have to make sure that you put some time into it. Like, everything isn't on your schedule. Self-publishing is on your schedule, but when you start bringing in distribution companies and folks that you're working with, it's not on your schedule. So you have to account for some of that as well. I understand that using a self-publishing company is very expensive. I didn't go through that process, but I just suggest that probably if you something that you may not want to do, because I understand that they don't have your interest of that book, as their first priority.
Something that I stress over with these new companies is the fact that they won't do any editing for you. They won't. I mean, it's almost like you said, we don't care about the work. We just want to make money on the sales, if there are any. Like, we're not going to make any investment into this. And so there are a lot of companies out there doing a lot of things, but some of them are very, very scheming. And I want everyone to be very careful about what they're doing with their work. This is your work. And so when someone says, I ran across a company a while back that was telling me they were helping people publish their books and charging them $10,000. $10,000. And they were paying. People were paying this. And the way he described to me the people they were targeting was so insulting to women. It was kind of they got the money, husband's going to pay it type of thing. And it was just a real eye opener that there are so many snakes out there that are taking advantage of us. So please do your homework and your research and listen. That's why we're doing this, so that you can learn from these successful writers who've done it. And we've all made our mistakes. So thank you so much for that. Anybody else want to chime in on that question?
Oh, go ahead, Coach.
Oh, I was just going to say, like Michelle, I started in in 2010 and published in 2012. But during that process, I was trying to figure out what to do. And I came across Createspace, which is now KDP. Mm-hmm. I purchased all of Createspace's. They said, oh, you need this, you need that, you need this, you need that. I purchased it all just to realize I don't need it. When one things that I did learn was how to effectively lay out my books, and that for my clients. That is one of the things that I learned that I didn't no longer have to pay for. So I would say when you have on your author, when you're on this journey, you become an author and you have your entrepreneur hat on, you should learn as much as you can. And as you learn, then you can have someone else do it. But then when you have learned it and you give it to someone else, you know when it's done correctly and when it's not. Mm-hmm. And so although I don't edit, I'm learning how to edit because I want to know how to edit. I want this under my belt. I'm not going to do it for my clients because that's a lot of work. That's not my lane. I don't want to, and I don't have to, but I want to know how to do it. And so when you learn how to do everything, then you can how can I say this? Hire someone to do it, but also learn how to do it so that you know it's done correctly. Mm-hmm. I'll just say that. So that's what I had to learn by going through Createspace. I learned I didn't have to purchase all of their services like I did. And then, as I grew, I just I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. And only purchase what I needed.
And that is a big piece, a big tool, a big important thing that I want everyone to know is that when you start down this path, you're going to get so many people telling you need this. You need to pay for this marketing tool. You need to do this. You need a video. I look at it and I moderate the page, and every day is someone trying to get in there and sell someone on something. You've got to have this. You will spend thousands of dollars and you have sold 2 books. Literally. You will spend thousands of dollars and you've sold 2 books. And it's just the way the industry is because it's not regulated and safeguarded. That's one of the reasons why I feel like the traditional companies can sit back and kind of smile because they're like, hey, you come to us, we're going to do it all for you and give you a check. But when you're doing it on your own, you're just trying to weed through all these schemes and all these people and all these ideas. So please pay attention. As Ebony said, pay attention to what's happening. Ayana?
I will say that there are pros and cons in each avenue, in each way that you go about. I have done vanity publishing with my first book, and then I've done self-publishing through KDP with the later books that I've come out with. And there are lessons and, like I said, pros and cons in each way. Traditionally, you get cut in a check in advance and they handle everything for you, but you might have to compromise some of your space and room to be creative and to really lead in the way that your story is being told because you're being paid up front and you have to then produce sales. When you get that advance check, you got to ensure that you reach out to their target audience and readership. So that's a con to traditional vanity. For me, I learned the most and I made the most mistakes when I did it the vanity way. Paying up front, like you said, they try to sell you everything. We'll do everything. We'll make the process so easy, but it'll be hundreds of dollars. And they really hook people on the dream of becoming published. And people are so eager that they will pay an exuberant amount of money and then really not even know what they're paying into and not read the fine print. I cannot stress enough to read contracts, to understand how royalty payments work. I Googled my book and I found my book being sold internationally on all of these websites because my vanity company sold one copy to a reprinting company that reprinted my book, and I don't get any royalties from that. I get that one check, that one royalty payment for that one book they sold, and then they could sell my book in Russia, and I'll never ever see any money for my book going around the world because my vanity company basically sold copies to another reprinting company. And so that happens a lot. KDP and Amazon, Amazon is a monster and they dominate the agency. So you understand that they want their footprint everywhere. So you have to read how they get their money and how their royalties come out and how much you make on the dollar for your book. Understand that if there is a middleman, somebody is making money off of you. And so wherever there's a way to cut the middleman and to own the process, that would be my advice to aspiring authors. If you can do it yourself. I made my last book cover I made on Canva myself. Nobody made it. I did it on Canva. It looks beautiful. And I hadn't paid nobody, and that was it. So if you can cut out the middleman and you can do it yourself, I would say do that, or find somebody who is professional, who is also has integrity about them, that wants to help you work on your project. Because there is a lot of people out there that do not have integrity and are just promising people results and not really helping them out.
Sounds good. You had a hand up here. Let's go. Is either one?
I go real quick, Tracy. I just got two things.
Oh,
one is speaking from the traditional, being traditionally published, the first thing you do have to understand in your contract, typically when you do traditional publishing, and this may have changed, like I said, I did this back in 99, they usually want more than one book. So you have now added the pressure of having my contract was 2 with an option, so depending on whether you're doing a series, mine was not a series, it was 2 standalone books. You fortunately, because I was writing, and so I had books already prepared, but just know that if you go into it, and it's 2 books, you now have a deadline, or they're asking for your full series, that you have to have it done within a certain period of time. Always with everybody, any kind of contract, that there is a termination clause, and that the termination clause is not skewed towards one party or the other. A lot of people get caught up, with the vanity situation. That's what happened with a lot of people, that they didn't read and understand the termination clause, or it may not have been one in there. So always have a termination clause to make sure that if things are not going in the direction that you want it to go, that you have an out, and it may take an attorney, or it may take a letter, but knowing what the termination clause is, what it means, and how to contact them in order to if you want to terminate on your side, what your rights are and how to do it.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say real quick. Okay. Don't forget your audience. That's one of the things that I had to really tune into, was my audience, because at the end of the day, it's your book and your readers. And so you have to, take your readers and really learn who your audience is. And that's who, at the end of the day, your work really needs to connect with. And as a self-published author, success for you is not necessarily what success for a publishing company, having to sell hundreds of thousands of books. So success for you may be selling, I need to sell 10,000 books a year. So that's one of the things I'm going to say is, don't forget your audience, and your audience, you can really get into and find your audience on the social media platforms. So, you connect with Black bookstagrammers, connect with those who are reviewing books, look and see what they're saying about the books. You can hear, that's one of the beautiful things about social media, is that you can hear directly from your audience, and you can really, make that your goal, is to really connect with your audience. So I think that that's really, really something important, and don't forget that. And do go ahead and get started. Just the one rule that I had for myself, because there's so much out there, so many things to watch out for, like Michelle's saying, is that I was like, in this day and age, there are so many tools out there where you can go and do everything and get started for free. That does not mean, like with Amazon, you're going to have to pay, they're going to take their cut, but you still haven't put out one single cent. And it's your first project. It's not your last project. So say you work with Amazon on your first project and you learn a lot. You don't have to make that who you work with precisely for your second project, but go ahead and get started and set that goal for yourself that I'm not going to be spending any money. I decided I will spend money on my book cover and I will spend money with my editor. Those are the two things, and that's it. Marketing and all that, there's so much of that out there for free, and social media has really changed the game for us as black writers and black authors. So, set that goal for yourself and so then that kind of helps you to fine tune your research. I'm looking for everything that can help me for free. And so, that's a do and a don't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go for it. Lenore.
All right, really, really quick. So I also started my self-publishing through Createspace, which is now owned by KDP and Amazon. So I kind of want to give you some do's and don'ts, or what's beneficial and what's not, and how I kind of got around certain things. So initially, when I planned my budget, I'm like, okay, if my book, it costs this much for my book, and I invested this much. So if I sell X amount, my return will be X amount. And then my royalties came, and I'm like, wait, I sold like 200 books and I have like a $20 check. What is going on? Right. Mm-hmm. And so what I will say is that if you're like, all right, I want to go through Amazon, because I'm not, to be transparent, the layout is really friendly in terms of thinking. It kind of just tells you exactly what you need to know, how to place your wording, what type of dimensions of your book you want. You could even actually go through the whole process and not publish on Amazon, just so that you have that structure, right? Or go through that process and make it an ebook instead, and then make the hardcover through a different publishing agency or a free publishing network, right? What I will say on how I am fixing my mistakes, and thank you so much for sharing like different websites and sources to publish my work in a different way, is one, the ISBN, and then two, if you published or already published and you're just like, I want to make more money other than my royalty, you can actually order your own books in bulks at the author discount. And that's when the entrepreneurship hat comes on, because now it's like, let me create my website, because I'm a brand and I can sell it on my website, and I will get all the benefit, more of the profit, as opposed to getting a royalty check. And in addition, if you are building your brand and you're like, we have Justine, who's a wellness writer, right? And she blogs. And if you're just like, oh, I want to, have a wellness brand, which will be marketed based off of my writing, look up different ways to LLC that process your brand, because then you can actually write off all those expenses, every expense. I'm talking about even if you're writing your book in your room, right? that's rent for your room, taxes for your book, shipping, book, all these things, Canva, which I'll dive into a little bit, right? You can write all of that off and make back some of the money that you invested in yourself and have more ownership of your work. Canva, I live to the gods for that. Canva is everything. If you have a nonprofit or know someone in a nonprofit, you can actually utilize it for free. If you don't want to spend additional money, there is a free trial that you can do that is everlasting. However, you are limited on some of the things that you can use on Canva. The Pro is phenomenal. I do flyers for it, for my workshops. I do things. I work in education in a high school as well. With mentorship and after school programs, I create things like with that. I create my pamphlets with that for my business when I'm vending. Canva is an amazing tool. I really, really highly recommend it. I also created my book cover, which I took a picture from my phone and finessed that and drew on it. And so you want to find different ways that kind of work for you. If you're a person where you're just like, I need an easy route, and let me just go on Amazon. I do encourage you to watch the documentary on Amazon on YouTube, because they're beastly. I am not even an advocate for it. However, it is an easy structure when it's publishing. But figure out, okay, I did this, right? That could circulate on Amazon, get my views up, get reviews. Make sure you tell people to review your book and post it on social media and tag you and take the reviews and put it on your website, right? So that you can show what people think about your book, right? However, I can also take that and sell it on a different platform, my own website, different platforms, and get money here. So you want to have different avenues where you circulate your work. So just wanted to plug that in because that was a big mistake of mine, thinking I was about to be a billionaire and I got a $20 check and I didn't understand what was going on. And also when you upload it, make sure you understand how you write out your description, because then they categorize you yourself. And then if your book doesn't fit in that and someone tries to like write that type of category, your book will not come up. And create your author profile as well. Very important, because you can link all of your work at once.
Thank you so much. I'm going to very quickly go over a couple of things I've done, a couple of things that I think would be helpful. And then we're going to go into marketing with the last 15 minutes. And I just want everyone here, because we're going to wrap it up with marketing and branding, is to give us 2 things that you've done that has helped you to sell your book. And I want you to think outside the box, because we have some of the standard things, but some of us have come up with some very creative ways to sell our work. And for our bloggers, we want to hear from you too, because you have to get people to view your blog. So what are you doing to do that? A couple of things that was said that I want to say, that as an entrepreneur, one of the things I wanted to do is to keep more of my money, okay, that I was making for my books. And so I did exactly what you said, which is I go to KDP, I upload my own book, I buy bulks of it as at the author's discounted rate. I normally pay between $3 and $4 per book when I buy them from Amazon, and then I sell them for between $15 to $17. Or if I'm at a live event, I may sell it for a little less because I don't have shipping. I've created my own website. I use Wix. You can do free websites. You can use any type of POS. Look, technology guys have changed the game for us. So you don't need someone to take your credit card. You can do Square. Wix could take it for you. PayPal. There are so many ways. Cash App, for those of you, just know that, in the IRS is coming for all of us using Cash App so much. But nonetheless, it is there to use. Those are some excellent ways to do it. From a marketing perspective, social media works, okay? But you have to work it. And you have to build a brand for yourself. And I wish we had more time to talk about brand building, because this is what I work with clients on all the time. Know that everyone is watching. Don't put out a children's book where you're trying to encourage young girls to have good self-esteem, but then you twerking on Instagram every day. I want you to know your brand carries, okay? People are watching you, what you're putting out there, and how it reflects on the work. Pay attention to those things, because you are your brand. You are your brand. So please pay attention to, what you're trying. If you're like a romance novelist and you want that to be your brand, then let it be your brand. Show that. But know that social media creates a really tough ride for those of us trying to promote ourselves, because some of us, our business lives and our personal lives have merged because of social media. And so we have to be very careful of those things. But so many ways to make money. I don't use Canva, but I do use Adobe Spark. I am a graphic artist by trade, so that's one of my favorites. But I do love Canva. I love all these free tools. There is so much you can do now. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter will allow you to you can get your analytics. You can find out who's looking at your work, who's clicking. You can schedule posts. There's just countless ways to do things. So let's not think that you have to, if someone comes to you and say, I need $10,000 to help you get your book out, I want you to stop and say no. As Tracy said, what can I get done for free? What can I do myself? These are some important tools. So we're going to talk about book marketing, because this is something that is an essential to me, because if you can't sell your book, then for most of us, our success is in the fact that people will read the book. It doesn't mean that you're going to be a millionaire, but you want people to read your work. And so we have to talk about those things. The things that work for me from a marketing perspective, honestly, is when I speak at events. If I speak at an event, I'm going to sell books. It just happens every time. If I post on social media, for every post that I put out there on social media, I typically would pick up 1 or 2 sales. Okay. Now, I don't have time to do them all the time. So a lot of times that I don't do a great job on social media the way I should. However, if I'm speaking, if I'm hosting an event like this, I will typically sell books. Let's kind of start with you, Justine, and talk about some of the things that you do to get people to your blog.
Oh boy. So I have quite a history of being on social media. I'm sure we've all had different experiences, but I started on YouTube. YouTube was an up and down slope. It felt very discouraging because now on YouTube, you mostly see one type A type of person. So I feel like for me, it's my responsibility to represent the everyday writer, the Black writer, and be the representation that I don't see. But I'm heavily on Instagram. Pinterest is a really good asset. If you can link your website to Pinterest, it brings in a lot of views. So if you're creating content on Canva, post it on Pinterest and then put the link on the photo, it literally will bring in so many. It's beautiful. So like I feel like with social media, you have to really play around and see what works for you, because Instagram is literally you showing the ass, you showing the shoes, you're showing the bag, and that's it. Like there isn't much depth. So you have to find the platforms that will receive you in the way that you want to be received and to be taken seriously. So I love Facebook, and just, Twitter is also a really good platform as well. I'm not too heavy on Twitter, but I know like you're able to cultivate a lot of conversations on there. But as far as like branding and marketing, I think one of the biggest things as a writer is to consistently show up as a writer, because sometimes we want to fit in and not feel, like show our presence as much because we don't know if people are going to receive it. So it can, kind of throw you off. But I think you always just have to like show up and let people know what you're here for, and just allow time to, give people the time to receive you, like over time, I guess you can say.
Excellent. So Jay, we're gonna go to you. We're gonna go quickly. We only have about 10 minutes. And so talk to us about how you've used Pinterest. You got me there. That's gonna be what I do when I get off this call. So good advice. Jade.
Yeah, so to be quite honest, I'm not much of a marketing guru. I'm definitely still learning, still in the beginner stage. But something that I have learned through research is that if you are creating a book cover, there are certain formats that speak to certain audiences. So if you're creating like a crime book or like something within the crime genre or fiction, like the colors, the font, everything speaks to a certain audience. So that's just something to be aware of. Again, I'm still learning, I'm sure Leonora or Coach Ebony have more information on this, but I'm still a beginner when it comes to that.
Okay, we're just going to go down the line. Who's next up? Just go for it and talk to us about some marketing that you've been using that's been successful.
Okay. So I started promoting my book like before I had it ready for people to buy. So I did had early buying. I built a website. When people bought my book, I put their responses on my website. I tagged people. I told people to tag me. I've been on radio stations. I've talked to folks at the libraries. Since I've been on this call, the Black American Museum in Richmond called me. They want to put my book in the gift shop. So you have to, thank you. I've been in classrooms, on girls clubs, virtual cafes. I've did book interviews. My husband bought me a t-shirt. I put my book on my t-shirt. One thing that I want folks to just really remember about marketing, your family. Aunt Cheryl might work in a library. Mm-hmm. Some of those connections, you have to look at your family different, because I have sold the most books because your family, your cousin or your uncle might be in a position, say I sell children books, school board, a principal, guidance counselor, things like that. So look at your family different, look at your friends different. because they may be the person that can get you in contact with somebody else. They may be your hookup. So don't take no for an answer. Keep pushing. Don't be intimidated. If you're not, one thing that I've learned is that doing a lot of interviews may not have people buying your book, but just that promotion will just put you into a different space. So take all the marketing and opportunities that you have there, because they're going to pan out to be your best advantage. If
Excellent.
you won't sell any books.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Tracy?
I'm just going to say real quick, because I know we all are going to be giving a lot of good advice, but I say on social media that, you know, it's really about the quality of your followers more so than the quantity. So, you know, while you still have the opportunity, before you are that mega famous author, you really have the opportunity to vet your followers. So, you know, as new followers come on, check them out. And, you know, if they're right for you, keep them. If not, you know, go ahead and click for them to allow them not to follow you, because you don't want to build up. That was something I did originally. I built up I went really fast on building up my social media followers. And as I began to look through them, there was just a lot of people who definitely weren't going to buy books and just all kind of schemish people on there. So I took the time to go through and I really deleted all of the ones that weren't authentic. And then I built back up from there. Now, one thing with Instagram, with the business page, if you have your book on if it's a business page account, they have lots of rules and regulations about unfollow or letting people or clicking to have people unfollow you. But on the personal page, it's very easy for you to say, okay, yes, I don't want this person. I'm going to click so they can't follow me. So I'd say stick with the personal page until it's really necessary for you to go to the business page and you have those numbers, because you have more, you can do more things as far as controlling your followers with your personal page.
Excellent. I wish we had more time to talk about social media, what works, what doesn't work. What you said is key. You need quality, not quantity. You need good followers, because the way those platforms operate, if you have the wrong people following you, it's hard. When you boost, all you're doing is boosting to the wrong people. You have to get rid of those who aren't the right match for you. And it takes a little work, but it's so well worth it. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Coach Ebony?
Alina, I believe that's how you pronounce your name. I do apologize. Listen, I know I said this before, but I hope you all are taking notes. Everything she said was perfect. Okay. You are a walking billboard. Mm-hmm. If nobody opens their mouth about what it is you're doing, then you must. And look at your network. Someone put in here in the chat that your network is your net worth. I absolutely believe in that 100%. You have to know what it is that where you're going, and you have to plot that course out very well. Make sure you know who's going to be along for the journey and who needs to hop off along that way. It has been, when it comes to marketing and promoting, you can build your own platform. You don't have to be on everyone else's platform. Like Miss Michelle stated, when she first started, it was 12 of them, because she saw, I've been connected with her about a year now. And I remember, you mentioned one point was you have your book, but you didn't have people to connect with. So you started a group. So she created what she needed. And now thousands of people have connected to her because she created it. I would say, when you are building your platform as an author, engage your audience, ask them questions around what it is that you're sharing. The majority of my clients are writing their memoirs. So I tell them all the time, talk about your book, ask a random question. To them, it seems random, but to you, it's more strategic. If you're talking about miscarriage of a baby or the difficulties of getting pregnant, just ask people questions along that line, and not only would that connect with your readers, but that also may give you some content to write about in your book that you may not even thought about doing. So in essence, create your platform based on what it is that you want to see. And that's how you market yourself. Market yourself as the person, the go-to person that you want people to come to, whether it's for a business or for as an entrepreneur. Just market yourself according to what you want people to think of when they think of you. What do they think of? Like for me, I'm the writing coach and publisher engineer. People think of me, I want to write a book. Ebony, you're the first person. Or somebody post, I want to write a book, but I don't know where to start. My name get tagged in everything. Why? Because that's what I promote myself as. That's what I market as. And so, yeah, you just have to just get out there.
Absolutely. You are your brand, ladies. Even on the screen right here, dropping nuggets in the comment line. This is all marketing. You want to be the subject matter expert. Learn to take advantage of these opportunities to get in front of people. Writing a book and then deciding you don't want exposure. I don't know how you're going to sell your book. Okay. You're going to have to expose yourself a little bit. You got to do it. And so get comfortable with that. Get comfortable with your level of exposure that's acceptable to you. But you cannot go write a book and hide and then think you're going to sell it unless you've got a great avatar or a great front man or woman. But if that's not the case, it's going to be you. So get your makeup on, look pretty, go for it. Go talk, go live, do reels. I mean, I said something about twerking, but if that's what your book is about, twerk on. I don't care. I just want you to know that you are your brand. You got to go for it. Okay, we've got a short time here, Yana, and then Aziza, and then we're going to wrap it up with our final wonderful guest from New York. She's going to wrap it up for us. So go for it.
I'll go very quickly because I put a lot of tips in the chat. But one that I wanted to pull out from what I put is no matter what you sell, because I'm an entrepreneur coach as well, no matter what you sell, people do not buy the what, they buy the why. And so you have got to define for your audience why your book matters, why it's necessary, and the value of it, and why it should be in their hands, why they should open it and turn the page, why it should be on their bookshelves. Sell the why, whatever it is that you do. It doesn't matter about the what. And so really have a very strong elevator pitch that you can hit anybody with. This is my book. This is why it's important. This is why you need to read it. And don't be afraid. You are a walking billboard. You are your own marketing team. Everywhere you go, you walk into that space with an opportunity to make a connection that can make you some profit and move you along in your authorship. So be prepared to sell and connect with people. Thank you.
Thank you. Aziza?
Mine kind of actually is a combination of what Ayana just said and what Jade said. In a store or in a place, even if you are doing speaking engagement, the cover will get their attention. What's on the back, the blurb, sells the book. And so if you're going to not just use social media, but I'm very much a ad person, Amazon ads, Facebook ad, BookBub, and all of that. So you have to make sure that your blurb and when you're showing the experience of your characters or your experience on the back of the book, if you have 50 people and you're sitting there talking to, somebody can pick it up and they can see the why on the back of the book, why this story is important or something that connects them to the experience of what you've written. And so don't discount the blurb. And when you're doing ads, bits and pieces of the blurb, you want those key things that will connect your person to your story. And that will encourage them to, at the very least, follow that trail and find out more. So don't discount the blurb. The blurb is just as important as the cover and you as the writer. Excellent.
You gonna wrap it up for us?
Yeah, sure. So you ladies said such amazing things. What a space to be in, being last, but I echo everything that you say. I will just piggyback off of a couple of things. You are your brand. You have to be confident in your work, because if you're not confident in yourself, no one else is going to believe in you. And that falls into preparation. Be prepared so you never have to get prepared, right? I think I messed up that saying, but you know what I mean?
We know what you're talking
elevator
about.
pitch is really, really important. How can I sell myself in 15 to 30 seconds or less? You might run into someone in the street that you didn't have no idea the position that they hold. You find out, and it's like, okay, how can I maintain their attention, especially with our attention spans being this long these days, and you're on the move? How can I sell myself and brand myself? Then I would also say, when it comes to like social media and putting yourself out there, try new things. It's a scary world, right? But you'll never know what works for you unless you put yourself out there. I personally don't like going live. There's no room for mistakes on social media, but I've built an amazing tribe by going live. And then it led to me doing something called Tribe Talk Thursdays, where I link up with like a variety of different men and women, and we talk about things when it comes to like life and writing and being an entrepreneur, right? So go live sometimes, mix it up a little bit, right? Try to find yourself in spaces where you can kind of implant yourself there, right? If you go to a bookstore, don't be afraid to speak to the owner, like, hey, like, I'm an author, carry a card with you, or like some type of pamphlet. You always have to have something with you that you could just slide off, or a website, yes, or a QR code, or something that they could just scan, pull it up, and you're there. So definitely just always be prepared in that manner. Try new things, network. Yeah, I guess that's it. You guys said so many things. I know we're at time, but I'll drop my email and information in the chat, and we could always just talk further.
Everybody, this has been excellent. 2 hours. 2 hours. There was no dead time. There was no and on. We didn't know what to talk about. We had a great conversation. I've learned so much from all of you, and I hope that our guests were able to learn from you as well. I think the overarching results of this conversation is this. Once the book is written, there's a lot more work to do. It doesn't have to be too complicated. It doesn't have to be overly expensive. It doesn't have to be brain surgery, but it has to get done if you want to sell your book. It is work, and you're going to be selling that book for a very long time. I'm still selling the book I wrote and published in 2010. I still sell it. I still get calls from book clubs, and that's another thing we didn't talk about. A great way to get your book out there is to connect with book clubs. Please connect with them. Tell them you'll come in. You'll talk to them about the book. Excellent way to sell books. But there are so many things that you need to do in order to get your book out. So once you've published, it doesn't stop there. You don't publish the book and then you walk away and then you have 1 million sales. You really have to have a strategy. And all the things that the ladies have talked about here are great things, great opportunities for you to take advantage of, whether it's social media or ad buys or all these different areas that we have just talked about on this call. We didn't even get to questions. I want you guys to know that. I'm glad that you were so active in the chat box. Most of you were able to provide a lot of information. Please drop your contact information in there. But I think all the questions got answered, but we normally would go through them. But we were given so many nuggets until we didn't have to just stop and do the questions per se. But if there's anything that you want to know, these for the people who are watching, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm the founder of the Black Writers Workspace. I'm also the owner of directtoauthor.com. Encourage everyone to put your books out there. The couple of things that are coming up that I want everyone to know about is that we are having this great opportunity. We have a writing competition called the Black Creators Collaborative. You can win cash prizes for your work, any work. It's due on April 15th. This is the second one. We normally do the Writers Chapter 1 writing competition every year. They are just phenomenal. So thank you to everyone for coming and being a part of this. It will be on clips of it will be on Instagram. It's live on Facebook now. It will be available on Facebook and YouTube for eternity. Feel free to put it on your website. Feel free to break it up and show clips of it. It was an amazing, amazing area. And we have a great group of people who have been commenting. So thank you to everyone who participated. Love you guys all. And until the next time, we're going to be doing another Pen Posse next month. Not sure what the topic will be, but we do invite you all to participate. So you can open your mic and just tell everybody, have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It was really nice.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Love and life, family.
Well done.
Bye. Thank you so much.
I'll talk to
Yes,
you.
Michelle. Thank
Have a
you.
great weekend. I'm so excited, and I want to get to know all of you. So hopefully, I'll get a chance to buy everybody's book and get to read it. And
Yes.
that
Let's
blog.
stay connected, ladies.
So,
Definitely will stay connected with you all.
absolutely, I love all these beautiful women working together. So
Yeah.
thank
Yes.
you,
Me too.
thank you.
Books out, ladies.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
You too.
Goodbye.
Bye.